I love talking to authors, especially Western fiction. I just love that kind of stuff. And historical fiction and things like that are just so much fun. Finding out how they live their lives and write their books and do their thing has just always been fascinating to me. So I'm really excited to get into this interview today. You may hear birds in the background, my husband on the tractor, or the children playing with the dogs. This is Real Life on the Prairie with Donita Fogelman of prairie-trail.com, weathering the dust storms of life with God's divine help. And I have with me today Faith Blum. Welcome.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a wife, mom, author, and entrepreneur. I have published over 30 books. Most of them are Christian historical fiction, and most of those are Westerns. I love stories because they can teach history, but in a fun way. And it is also my way to have a creative outlet while also taking care of a toddler. And I have always been a small town resident. And honestly, big cities stress me out. So I would not want to live somewhere that was bigger than, I don't know, 50,000 people. Even 50,000 is a lot.
It is. I
Yeah.
agree.
I live in central Wisconsin, with my husband, my son, and our cat who may join me in my laps shortly because she's here right now because she likes to be around when I'm talking to people on
Of course.
video. Um,
The
and
animals are part
then
of the family.
Yes, exactly. When not writing, you can find me baking sourdough, cooking gluten-free and corn-free food, or taking walks with my now 3-year-old.
Oh, wow. They grow so fast. It
I
seems like you just
know,
had your baby the other day.
I know, but no, he's 3 now.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Whenever Grand Princess hit 3, it's like she skipped I hate saying terrible twos. I always say the talented twos, but she went right into the terrific threes.
Yeah,
They're incredibly busy, incredibly busy. How
yeah.
many books have you published now?
I don't know the exact number, and I'm not going to try to count them up right now, but it's over 30. Um, yeah, novels, novellas, short stories, box sets of novels, box sets of novellas. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
over of all of those.
Well, I got acquainted with you in a series that you were naming after hymns
Hmm.
and was very impressed with your ability to hit some pretty hard issues, even very delicately, but
Thank
still,
you.
not avoiding those hard issues.
Hmm.
Um, you want to talk a little bit about how you came up with some of that?
Well, um, my story, those books in particular were set during the Wild West. So there was a lot of wildness going on, hence the name Wild West. So I knew that I had to include, the ladies of ill repute, um, at least in some fashion. And, but I wanted to do it delicately because I wanted my books to be able to be read by the entire family. Um, and there's outlaws and all those different people that are not of great moral standing, but I also know that a lot of people back then had a really strong faith in God. So I wanted to bring like that contrast out when I was writing both of the, all of those stories. So by God's grace he let me do it in such a way that it still came out. And also just um, still keep it somewhat family friendly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you did an excellent job with those. It did turn out. I I always get a little frustrated slash worried whenever I see Christians trying to avoid hard
Mm-hmm.
topics. You know,
Yes.
it causes more problems in the long run, especially in the family. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
this is a hard world that we live
Yeah.
in, and it's difficult, and you don't want to throw your children out there in the middle of that with absolutely no idea, you know,
Yeah.
what they're going to meet.
Yeah.
The more prepared we can have them, the better for that
Yeah.
type of stuff. And
Yes.
that's
Exactly.
not nitty gritty. You don't have to give them gory details.
Mm-hmm.
Try to
Yeah.
help them be prepared.
Yeah. Because like even when I was describing, somebody who was in a less reputable, like the ladies of ill repute, they I don't describe what they're wearing because most of the time they weren't wearing modest clothing. I don't describe, in gory detail what they're doing.
Right.
But most people who are aware of the history, they know what's going on. They can, fill in as many details there as they want to in their own heads, hopefully not too many details, but they at least know, this is what they were doing, this is what she's alluding to. But younger readers, it just goes over their heads. This is just somebody that is in the book. They don't know exactly what's going on. And their parents then can have to, make that decision as to whether they, say a little bit more about what is
Is
happening.
happening. Yeah. And as you get older, things start clicking,
Hmm. Hmm.
whenever
Yeah.
you're mentally ready for
Yes.
those types
Yeah.
of things.
I've had that happen before too. It's like I was rewatching some movies that I saw as a kid, and I'm like, I had no idea they talked about that in the
Yes.
movie because I just wasn't it wasn't on my radar when I was 10
Yeah,
versus now.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I grew up in the 80s, so there were
Hmm.
a lot of themes going on in the 80s.
Hmm.
And yeah, I go back and watch those movies now and I'm like, oh my goodness, I did not even realize. I don't
Yes.
want my children to watch this.
Uh-huh.
It did. It went totally over my head. I never
Hmm.
what
Yeah.
was going on.
Yep.
Oh goodness. So let's see, you had written several books before you were married.
Yes.
And how has marriage and family life played into the way you do your writing?
Well, I definitely write less now because I have a whole house to take care of, plus a toddler. And before he was a toddler, newborn, and younger toddler. But I have well when let's see, backing up a little bit. When my son was born, pregnancy brain was definitely a thing, and writing was very difficult during that. So I didn't force it. I did what I could. I had a couple of books that were ready to publish that I like pregnancy brain. You don't pregnancy brain is okay when you're just marketing the book. Not so much when you're actually trying to write a book. um, so I was still able to get a couple of books published during my pregnancy. And I think one shortly after he was born. I don't remember exactly what the timeline was there. Um, but I basically took a break from writing actually until my son was almost a year old, just because the newborn phase is very tiring. You're trying to figure out how to raise this child who is a baby and needs your help a lot. And um, sleep schedule always changes.
Yeah, yeah.
Once you get into routine with sleep, suddenly it's changing
Suddenly
again.
something happens.
Yes.
They grow so much and go through so many phases in that
Yes.
first year.
Yeah. So he was born in March of 2020. So once January rolled around in 2021, I was like, okay, I really want to get back into my writing. I want to start getting more consistent with it, and actually be able to finish something. And plus his schedule was a little bit more normalized and consistent, and I knew it probably would be for a while. Um, so I decided to set a New Year's resolution, which actually I just make goals, not New Year's resolutions. But um, my goal was to write at least 10 minutes every day. Sometimes it'd be longer, sometimes it'd Well, no, I tried to write every 10 minutes every day, so it wasn't really shorter, but sometimes it'd be longer. Sometimes it'd be like 10 words because it just wasn't coming, but at least I got something down on the page and I met my goal for that day. Sometimes I wrote for an hour and I got 1,000, 2,000, whatever words in that day. So it was just like starting small and getting that consistency in just so that I, was getting something on the page every single day, except for Sundays. I do take Sundays off. And some Saturdays depending on the weekend.
Yeah.
um, but just getting into that consistency, and then from there, once I got more into that consistency, then I set my goal higher. Sometimes it was minutes per day, sometimes it was a certain number of words per day, whatever stage I was in for with my writing, whether it be writing or editing. And I found that to be very helpful.
Oh, yeah. Consistency is the biggest
Mhm.
thing, whether it's parenting or writing or crafting, whatever it is, just consistency is huge. And most of us, that's the easiest thing to miss, right,
Mhm.
as you're going. And then keeping it flexible too. I love the way you had just a small goal. And if you exceeded that, the dogs came in. If you exceeded that, yay. And if you
Mhm.
just wrote 10 words, then yay.
Mhm.
You can
Yeah.
celebrate both. And I just love that.
Yeah.
And so how has that evolved over the last few years?
Over the last few years, um I now have more consistent, like, he's only taking one nap a day, so I know nap time is gonna be a certain length, roughly, depending on the day, obviously. Usually it's at least an hour. And I've also gotten to the point where I'm an early bird. My brain works best in the early mornings, before my toddler wakes up, because by then, even sometimes by nap time, I'm like, my brain is just dead. I have no creativity left in me right now. Um, so I know I get up early. Some people would be shocked by how early I get up. Some people I know, I've told people how early I get up. I'm like, how do you get up so early? I'm like, I go to bed early too. It's not like I'm staying up until midnight and then getting up at 4 o'clock in the
Right,
morning.
right.
I'm going to bed at no later than 9 p.m. so that I can get up by 4 a.m. so I can get my devotions done. And then I get dressed and then I start doing my writing. Um, and so I have at least an hour in the morning that I write, sometimes up to two, depending on how late my son sleeps in the morning, and how much I have to help my husband get out the door for work. And then I have at least an hour, usually closer to an hour and a half in the afternoons when I do my writing or editing. Sometimes editing works a little bit better during nap time because, my mental energy is a little bit lower. So I
I
sometimes
like
just,
that you're aware of when you have the best mental energy and when you don't. A lot
yeah.
of times we try to force ourselves into a schedule or routine that just doesn't work, and we're not
Hmm.
taking advantage
Yeah.
of those prime times.
Hmm.
Personally, my father-in-law was a real early bird, and he was up and around and going real early in the morning, and I'm kind of an in between. My husband's a later person. He's
Hmm.
really not awake until later in the day. So, yeah, being able to just recognize that and
Yeah.
what your body kind of needs in those time periods, and that you can do downtime stuff.
Hmm.
I like that yeah, there's other things you can do, even if your brain isn't primed for writing in the
Yeah.
afternoon, you've got other things that you can do.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So, what is your writing process?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Um, what exactly do you mean by process? I'll go
Well,
there.
are you, everybody wants to know, are you a planner or a pantser?
Okay.
How do you kind of do your process? Do you just sit down and just start writing? Do you outline?
I do outline. Sometimes it's very in-depth outline. I am a student in the Author Conservatory, and they teach you to write a concept for your story, and then a synopsis. It's a 3-page double-spaced synopsis, and then a 3-act outline. So that's what I've done with some of my novels recently. It does seem to make my um novels a little bit more strong, but I also discovered that it also makes my first drafts a lot shorter usually. um just because I feel like I'm more tied to that outline and less able to go off on a few rabbit trails and stuff like that. Um so actually with my most recent novella that I'm writing, I decided I'm going to do like kind of a cross between a synopsis and a 3-act outline. And actually it's kind of a cross between synopsis, outline, and chapter outline. I'm like, I know I need to make this into chapters, so I'm gonna just go ahead and put them into chapters right away. And that actually worked better. I was able to draft a little bit faster than I have with some of my other ones, and I feel like I still have a strong story, but it's also a slightly longer, not much. It's still fairly short. I'm very short-winded when it comes to things, writing wise. So sometimes I struggle with actually adding enough. Like the novel that I'm working on right now is less than 50,000 words, which is technically not quite novel length yet. But I'm still calling it a novel because it's so close. But yeah, sometimes I struggle with adding things in, but I think at least I have that strong story base in
Yeah.
there.
Well, and sometimes concise is better.
Yeah.
More words doesn't necessarily make a better
Hmm.
story.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can really pack a punch with a good story
Hmm.
in a
Yeah.
shorter. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So and people have shorter and shorter attention spans.
Hmm. Yes.
And you can't blame it all on TikTok, I don't think. I think it's just
No.
the world as it is right now. But
Hmm.
yeah, that shorter attention span, sometimes it's a lot nicer to have,
A shorter story.
yeah, shorter
Yeah.
stuff because
Yep.
life does kind of take on. I'm a long story person. I like very, very old books. I like um yeah, I like the long old
The
books.
Charles Dickens, or he was paid by the word, so he
Yes,
made them as wordy as
and a
possible.
Karina, and yes, so you
Uh-huh.
give me those epic
Yes. I
novel
like
lines.
those, but I also like a mix. I like to have the longer classics, but I also like to read some
Yeah,
of
every once
the
in a while. Yeah, I
shorter
like
ones
to mix it
too.
up. Yeah, yeah, because I mean the longer classics it take a little bit more brain power, and they tend to
Hmm.
send me, since they're more historical, they were written in that historical time. I
Hmm.
they send tend to send me down rabbit trails. So I'm like, Anna Karina really did that to me
Mm,
because I don't know a lot about Russian
for sure.
history.
Yes.
And so it really sent me down several rabbit holes.
Oh yeah,
And
I'm sure.
I was amazed. I had not watched any of the movies.
Hmm.
And so I had a really fresh perspective on it. And I was really amazed. I don't think I want to watch any of the movies now that I've read them
Yes.
because
There's some things in that book that are a little bit,
well,
they're
and
fine
it's
for
a
a book.
book series, but it's really
Oh,
from
it's
a
beautiful.
Christian perspective.
Hmm.
Um, but that, yeah, I think whenever they make movies, they've always got to pick out the worst of the stuff.
Yes. Yes.
I feel like they're just going to totally mess up, like Dracula. They're just going to totally mess up whatever Christian perspective is there
Yeah.
and go with the creepy or
Yes.
the other stuff. So, yeah, I really enjoyed it, but it took me quite a while because
Mm,
I had to look up. I'm like, okay, what is this? What was going on here? And yeah, I love that. But
mm.
sometimes, you say mom or pregnancy brain. I am absolutely convinced that children suck the brains out of you while you're pregnant. You don't get it back.
Mhm.
And that's happened. Yeah, the youngest is over there apologizing. I'm sorry, mom. I'm like, yeah. So sometimes that shorter book, it just
Mhm.
helps. You can kind of, and sometimes you want to read a book to just kind of almost escape and not think about some of the hard things going on in the world, so
Right.
having a nice short novel that's just got a sweet story to it is,
Yeah.
yeah, refreshing sometimes.
Yep.
So what are some of your favorite books?
Um, I have a hard time with this question. I really like Louis L'Amour. He has some language in his books, but besides that, I like his books. And they are on the shorter side, which is kind of nice. And I also like Karen Whittemire. Sometimes the romances go almost too far. They're Christian, so they never go past the bedroom door, but sometimes she does seem to go a little bit too far, in my opinion. I like really clean romance.
Right,
And
right.
hers go almost to the edge sometimes.
Yeah,
But
little
most for the
steamy.
most part, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
For the most part, hers are really good. And I really like her storylines. Even yeah, because it's more than just the romance usually. Um Amanda Tarot is another author I really like. She's an indie published author, writes more young adults than adult, but I like her books. Um, I'm totally going blank on
That's
other ones.
okay.
For the classics, I really like Little Women and Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah, me too. Really like those. Yeah, that's neat. What, whenever you're picking up a book to read to your son, what do you gravitate toward for him?
Um, I gravitate towards books that actually have some moral to them, usually. One of his favorite books is Little Blue Truck, and it's about being kind to other, in that case, animals, because it's a truck on a farm. And there's this dump truck that really doesn't want to be nice. He's busy. He wants to just get back on his way, and then he gets stuck in a mud puddle, and all the animals come to help. So learning how to be helpful and be kind, so that when you're stuck, you actually have somebody to help pull you out of the mud puddle.
Yes.
Um, and like actually, I've actually gotten rid of a couple of books that we were given because they have literally no point to them,
I have
or
a hard time
or
with
their
that.
or the point to them is contrary to the Bible.
I I
So
I'm
yeah.
with you 100%. Whenever I was teaching our oldest how to read, we really struggled at the very first,
Mhm.
because she had a hard time putting the sounds together. And somebody suggested Dr. Seuss, and I hate Dr. Seuss. I just do.
Mm.
Nobody shoot me in the comments, please. But I cannot stand Dr. Seuss. But she needed all of that rhyming to figure
Mm.
out how to put the sounds together. And once we did
Interesting.
a month or so of Dr. Seuss, then she just took off with her reading after
Mm.
that. So, and we would just, as we were going down the road, we would say, okay, grass, what rhymes with grass? And we would do little games and things too. But
Yeah.
yeah, I suppose the pointless books have a purpose
Yeah.
of their own. But yeah, I like a point to it, and I want that point to line up with scripture.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So, what tips do you have for new writers who are struggling?
Try to set a small goal and get consistent with your writing. Always, always, always be learning more about writing, because there's always something that you can learn. I recently found out that some people don't even know some of the stuff that you can do with Microsoft Word or Google Docs, wherever you're writing, to format your book. So like learn how to do the automatic indent on the first line of your paragraph, because tabbing does not work. That's like the one big one that I've recently found that some people don't know. I'm like, really? But I guess. So just keep learning, even if it's not necessarily writing specific, but like learn how to do some of that formatting on your Word documents or your Google documents. It's not that hard to find online, I'm sure. And if you're planning to indie publish, learn some business skills as well, because just putting your book out there is not going to necessarily bring on in sales. You have to learn how to market it first. So don't rush into publishing your book, whether it be traditional or independent. Take your time. It doesn't have to be done this instant. Get
Yeah.
it well edited, get it ready to publish, do
Mhm.
some research on marketing a book effectively, and there's
There's
lots
a
of resources out
huge
there for that.
difference between a well thought out and planned launch
Mm-hmm.
for a new book
Yes,
and just
throwing
publishing
it
a book
there.
and then trying to market it after the fact. Yeah,
Yeah,
it makes a huge
that
difference.
that first week of publication is actually one of the biggest
And you want to work
the
up to
biggest
that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you want to
yeah,
work up to that, but that's when you're going to get your most sales. That's when Amazon's going to take notice of your book, if they take notice of it, because if you don't get any sales that first week, then they're going to not take notice of it. They're
right,
not going to start helping you push it in some ways, which
right.
they don't help a lot necessarily, but they do help
Right,
some.
right, right. Yeah, if you can get enough people on a good launch team,
Mm-hmm.
and start really pushing the book so that people are interested whenever it comes out, and you've got
Yeah.
that pre-order thing that you can do now,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
then you can push it really close to the bestseller, if not
If
up
not,
there.
go to the
Yeah.
bestseller. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. With just some extra thought and consideration. That's really good advice. Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, is there any closing thoughts that you would like to give your audience?
A couple of resources specifically for the marketing, and actually just publication in general. The Glory Writers, they're on Instagram and they have a website. Um, they have a lot of really good resources for marketing, especially if you're wanting to go indie published. Um, and then I've just recently started listening to a podcast. Let me look it up quick. I think it's Book Launch Blueprint, I think. Just a second. Um, actually, it's Novel Marketing Podcast. He has a course on Book Launch Blueprint, which is open for registration right now. Actually, I can't afford it right now, otherwise I would be doing it. But um, he has a really good course. Actually, my friend Amanda Terra, who I mentioned, she did it 2 years ago now, maybe.
Okay. And I'll make
And
sure and
found it
have
very
these
helpful.
links in the description.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
great.
I even some of the podcast stuff. Actually, he's the one that I listened to one of his podcasts about like actual book launch, and it was really good just hearing that that first the week before, the week of, and like the week after your book launch are like the three key weeks for your actual book launch.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And where can people find you?
faithblum.com.
All right.
And I also have Instagram. Faith Blum Author is my username on Instagram. Um, yeah, those are the two main places I am. And I have a newsletter there's a link for that to sign up on my website.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really
Well,
appreciate it.
yeah.
And make sure to pop on over to prairie-trail.com, and you can either subscribe to my newsletter or subscribe to our new magazine. And remember, you can make it through the dust storms of life with God's divine help.